Our top story tonight, it's finally happened. DeAndre Hopkins has finally found a home. There is no more speculating. There is no more waiting. There is no more worrying. Unless you are a Treylon Burks or Chig Okonkwo GM, then you are very worried. We also had Evan Engram sign a 3-year extension with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've got some updates on the franchise tag of Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, and more on Player Profiler today. Finally happened. We had to wait so long. First, DeAndre Hopkins, we thought he would be traded. Then he was cut by the Arizona Cardinals, gets to find his new home. And when he was cut by the Arizona Cardinals, he gave us 3 criteria that he wanted. Number 1, he wanted stable management, which is interesting because I suppose they have stable management in Mike Vrabel. He's not going anywhere, but they do have a new general manager as well in Ran Carthon. So I suppose if it's a 2-year contract for DeAndre Hopkins, Ran Carthon can be well past 2 years. That's minimum. He's going to get at least 3 or 4. So that kind of makes sense, but still, new general manager, new vision for this team. He also wanted a QB who loves the game. And now I can't comment on whether or not Ryan Tannehill loves the game, but it appears so. Because remember, Ryan Tannehill had a high ankle sprain, returned too early, tried to grit through it, aggravated the high ankle sprain, and then had to miss the rest of the season. But you can't say Ryan Tannehill doesn't love the game. He has played through some pretty wicked injuries. He tore his ACL with the Miami Dolphins, recovered from that. It's been an up and down career for Ryan Tannehill, make no mistake. But the guy loves the game. I will give him that. Though this isn't the Super Bowl opportunity DeAndre Hopkins had hoped for. That wasn't one of his big 3 criteria. The other one was a great defense, because defense wins championships. And that's not something the Tennessee Titans have at all. They have a solid front 4. Jeffrey Simmons is a Pro Bowler, all-pro type of player. Teair Tart, one of the better nose tackles in the NFL, but he's a nose tackle. He doesn't play a full complement of snaps, and it is weak behind those 2. And then at edge, they've got the return of Harold Landry, but he's coming off an ACL. Denico Autry now becomes edge rusher 2. And before that was going to be Bud Dupree. That's a downgrade. They also have Arden Key come in. But again, that is a downgrade from Denico Autry, who was supposed to be the edge rusher 3. So it's a good defensive line if everyone stays healthy. That's just the worry. Weak linebacking core, terrible corners for the Tennessee Titans. So not a great defense, pretty stable management, and a QB who does love the game, though he is not the best quarterback in the NFL and doesn't give him as much of a chance at a championship as even Mac Jones would have. But whatever. It's a 2-year, $26 million deal for DeAndre Hopkins. That averages out to $13 million per year, which is $2 million less than Odell Beckham will make this year for the Baltimore Ravens. But DeAndre Hopkins can also make up to $32 million in incentives. That would put him at $16 million per year, which would put him past Odell Beckham. And this is a bet on himself, DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to make $12 million in base salary this year. He can make up to $15 million this year. Next year, he can make up to, wait, the decision going live. I apologize. Recording while great episode. Make sure you check that out. Aired earlier today. But anyway, back to the first report on Doug Hyatt. And how's this going to shape up for fantasy football purposes? We'll get to that right after this word from the Podfather.
Hey, it's the Podfather. I have great news. The 2023 draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated air yards, and that one dynamic for each team that you need to know when making decisions on draft day. And we added a bunch of features. Individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you can take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, also brand new this year, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league, do's, don'ts, tips, and what the more innovative fantasy commissioners are doing this year. That's presented by Trophy Smack. The whole package is presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the FFPC, Ray Garvin, Derek Brown, the best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.
Get the draft kit and go and get DeAndre Hopkins because he still has it. He was the wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game this year, played only 9 games, but averaged 16.9 fantasy points. And this is right in line with the rest of his career. He took a step back last year, only 14.7 points per game in 2021. But before that, 18 points per game, 17.8 points per game, 20.8 points per game, 20.7 points per game. And this past year, were DeAndre Hopkins to play a full slate of games, he was on pace for 1,354 yards, 717 yards in 9 games, only 3 touchdowns, and still the wide receiver 9 in points per game. He is still an elite commander of targets. And as you know, we at Player Profiler believe targets are a skill. He was number 4 in target share at 29.4% and number 2 in air yard share at 43.5%. DeAndre Hopkins is still playing at an elite level. He had a 51.8% route win rate last year. That was 4th among receivers. And his 47% win rate versus man coverage was 2nd among wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is still running routes at an elite level. And he is still very efficient. It's not just the route running. It's not just the commanding targets. He is efficient. 2.21 yards per route run. That was 17th in the NFL, despite his advanced age. 2.11 yards per team pass attempt. That was number 15. And most impressively, DeAndre Hopkins averaged 5.7 yards of cushion from the defender every snap. That was 1st in the NFL. So even though DeAndre Hopkins, he never had elite speed, but they still respect DeAndre Hopkins so much that they are giving him cushion because they know one move from DeAndre Hopkins and it is all over. DeAndre Hopkins is still a dominant wide receiver in the NFL. He is going to be, if not a wide receiver 1, he's going to be a high-end wide receiver 2 at worst. He is going to be the alpha of this Titans passing game, and that is bad news for Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo, especially when you look at the history of the Tennessee Titans with Ryan Tannehill and Mike Vrabel. Back in 2019, A.J. Brown, the wide receiver 1, 84 targets. That's not particularly great. What's even worse, Corey Davis, 68 targets and 47 for Adam Humphries, the 3rd option in the offense. Now, this was with part-time Marcus Mariota. Ryan Tannehill ended up taking over. So fast forward to 2020, and this is kind of the year that would give you hope looking at Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans. In 2020, a year that they ran more than they passed in Tennessee, A.J. Brown, 101 targets, turned into the wide receiver 5 in fantasy football. And Corey Davis, only 90 targets. That is the most that a wide receiver 2 has seen with Ryan Tannehill during his time with Tennessee. But Corey Davis was still the wide receiver 28. That's not great. That's high-end wide receiver 3 numbers, but high-end wide receiver 3 numbers for Treylon Burks. Like, if you believe Treylon Burks is better than Corey Davis, then you can make the case that he could end up as a wide receiver 2 still, especially if you don't like the Tennessee Titans defense. If you think it is awful like I do, then there is a little bit of hope that Treylon Burks can be 2020 Corey Davis, end up as a high-end wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, maybe push into wide receiver 2 territory. But then there's the rest. And granted, outside of Corey Davis, the Titans have not had a wide receiver 2 that can command targets the way that Treylon Burks showed he was able to at the end of the season. They had Austin Hooper as the second option on offense last year with 56 targets. 2021, it was Nick Westbrook-Ikhine with 53. But that's not good. That's not good at all. And it's even worse for the wide receiver 3. Adam Humphries had 47 targets. Remember Adam Humphries? That was a time. Then it was Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith as the wide receiver 3 in 2020, 63 targets. That was the best year. We are hoping for 2020 Tennessee Titans, but maybe even more pass attempts because of the bad defense. Because we don't want 46 targets from Julio Jones like we had in 2021, the third option. We don't want 53 targets for Treylon Burks like we had last year. He was the third option. Chig Okonkwo was tied for fourth with 45 targets. So based on the history of the Titans, the wide receiver 1 averages 92 targets, but that includes Robert Woods with 82 targets and a rookie A.J. Brown with 84. So I'm locking in well over 100 targets for DeAndre Hopkins. He's 101 targets for A.J. Brown. DeAndre Hopkins going to have probably at least 120, I would say. And then the wide receiver 2 averages 67 targets per year. But again, we are hoping that Treylon Burks can take that Corey Davis role, get 90 targets, maybe push 100 targets. Wouldn't that be lovely if Treylon Burks somehow found 100 targets? It's just not likely. And then Chig Okonkwo, the third option or wide receiver 3, including tight ends as wide receivers, averages 52 targets per year. Not good. There is not much hope for the Tennessee Titans, but there is that small glimmer of hope that Tennessee, despite passing more or passing less than they ran in 2020, somehow they get back to that type of numbers, those type of numbers. Hopefully, the Titans, because of their degraded defense, have to pass more. Because otherwise, there's no way that all of these players are paying off at ADP. Tajay Spears is someone that people like to have independent value. That's probably evaporated. That's less targets out of the offense. And then now it's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine versus Kyle Phillips to be the wide receiver 3 on the field. And we know that Chig's the third option in the offense, but it's just ugly for a lot of players in Tennessee, but great for Ryan Tannehill. Great for Derrick Henry because it opens up the offense even more. Interesting year for the Tennessee Titans. I thought they needed a rebuild. I still do, but hopefully DeAndre Hopkins isn't Julio Jones. I don't believe he is. I think I made the case that DeAndre Hopkins still has it in the advanced efficiency metrics and in the target commanding and in the route running. So Hopkins is going to be fine for this year. Hopefully Treylon Burks can be a wide receiver 3 like Corey Davis was. And then it's going to be rough for Chig, no matter what, probably. But another tight end that had some actual good news today was Evan Engram. He signs a 3-year deal worth $42.5 million, gets $25.5 million guaranteed. That's essentially 2 years of the contract guaranteed. $28 million would be the full 2 years guaranteed. So a little bit less than that, $2.5 million not guaranteed for next year. So that's pretty good for Evan Engram. He gets the security that he was looking for. He doesn't have to play on the franchise tag, and he deserves the payday after coming off a career year. 73 receptions for 766 yards. Those were both career highs. 98 targets is actually third in his career. So Evan Engram, despite not having the most targets of his career, had the best numbers other than touchdowns. 4 TDs, the most he's had since his rookie season. But Evan Engram is a pretty damn good tight end. We just have to admit that at this point. Scott Connors, I believe it was, called him a unicorn because there is no other tight end that fits that profile of Evan Engram, where he is small, doesn't play every down, but it just works. Tight end 7 this past year at 10.4 fantasy points per game. And Evan Engram was on a tear early in his career. Tight end 4 as a rookie, averaging 11.6 fantasy points per game. The tight end 7 in 2018 with 11.3. And the tight end 7 again in 2019 with a career high 13.7 fantasy points per game. And then he had some injuries, fell off in 2020, only 8.8 fantasy points per game. 2021, 6.8, tight end 23. And then he gets into a real offense and he bounces back completely. Evan Engram is just good at football. 3rd among tight ends in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, and 5th in targets. Managed to finish 2nd in yards after catch. And it's not just what he was doing after the catch. He was 9th in yards per route run. Evan Engram was efficient. He was 10th in yards per team pass attempt. He was commanding targets. He was doing everything you want from a tight end. Evan Engram, you could not ask for more. He's going to finish as a tight end 5 to 10 for the rest of his NFL career. And he's going to be someone that you can just start consistently because tight end is a wasteland. The one problem with Evan Engram is the added target competition because he finished 21st in yards per reception. And they went out and added Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley now becomes the wide receiver 1, Christian Kirk the wide receiver 2, or you could have it flipped depending on who you ask. But Evan Engram, he's fighting for 3rd in targets with Zay Jones. And if Evan Engram sees a drop in targets, he's going to see a drop in fantasy points because despite how efficient he was, the yards per reception, the lack of explosive plays, he's going to have to either score more touchdowns or he's going to have to see the same amount of targets. And that's what we need from Evan Engram. But for the Jaguars, this is fantastic news. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Engram are all signed through 2024. You got 2 years of all these guys together for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And everyone but Zay Jones is signed through 2025. Zay Jones has a void year in 2025, so they could work on an extension then. But Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Travis Etienne gets his 5th-year option picked up, which is likely. He's still with the team in 2025. Trevor Lawrence is 5th-year option is in 2026. Christian Kirk signed through 2025. And then Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, he is on a 1-year deal, but he's set up for an extension after this season. They didn't trade for Calvin Ridley to just let him walk. He'll get franchise tagged or they'll reach a long-term deal, which is good news for Calvin Ridley, good news for the offense. And it's not just the weapons either. The offensive line is going to stay intact as well. 5 of the Jaguars' top 7 offensive linemen are all signed through 2024. This is a 2-year window at minimum for the Jacksonville Jaguars where everything is the same and they can just add talent to be a little bit better. And then after that, it could be a new team. We'll see how contracts shake out. But with Trevor Lawrence, the window is always open. Cam Robinson, center Luke Fortner, right guard Brandon Scherf, and right tackle Anton Harrison. They're all signed through 2024. Cam Robinson is the current left tackle, but he's suspended. He's going to be replaced by Walker Little. And if that works, maybe Cam Robinson slides into left guard, and then all 5 starters would be signed through 2024. It is just Ben Barch and Tyler Shatley, who were part-time left guards together last year. Those are the only ones on an expiring contract. Otherwise, the Jaguars, 2 more years with this entire offense. Minimum. That's good news for Trevor Lawrence and his fantasy football prospects. Looking at the other players under the franchise tag, bad news for Saquon Barkley, though they are getting a little bit closer, that they could reach a deal before the deadline tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll have an update on tomorrow's show about what actually happened, but Saquon has been offered $22 million guaranteed for the New York Giants. That is the equivalent to being franchise tagged 2 years in a row. So that's a start. He's going to want more than that, but that is a start for Saquon Barkley. And Josh Jacobs, we have heard reports that he received a 2-year, $26 million deal, which would be $13 million per year. I don't know about the guaranteed money, but that's a start too. There is some hope that a long-term deal gets done for Josh Jacobs. Even more hope a long-term deal gets done for Saquon Barkley. No hope that Tony Pollard signs a long-term extension, but that was always the plan. We knew that. He signed his franchise tag right away. Tony Pollard looking to get the long-term extension this year after he balls out and finishes as an RB1 in fantasy football. Some final news and notes across the NFL. It appears that Deshaun Jackson may be retiring. Posted on Instagram that he did it my way, 15 years strong, never another like it. Possible that means he's done. He did it his way for 15 years. There will never be another like him. Or it could just be one of those athlete posts where it's, yeah, I've done it my way for 15 years and I'm still going strong. But either way, if Deshaun Jackson does retire, he will go down as one of the best deep threats in NFL history. Though I don't think he'll go into the Hall of Fame based on some of the other wide receivers of his era. Anyways, moving on from Deshaun Jackson, we have some updates from the Carolina Panthers. Brian Burns has been offered a contract. They have started negotiations. Remember, the Panthers declined 2 first-round picks from the Los Angeles Rams last year to give up Brian Burns, which would have been awful for the Rams to do that. They no hope of competing last year, and giving up 2 first-round picks would have been a terrible decision. But they're working on a long-term deal. And finally, the final news of the day also comes from the Carolina Panthers. Miles Sanders believes that Andy Dalton is a Hall of Famer. What? Per Miles Sanders, I have a good feeling about these guys. He's excited about his team. Come on. These guys work, and that's the main thing I've noticed in OTAs. We've got a very, very good young QB that's being mentored by a very, very, very good quarterback, a future Hall of Famer, Andy Dalton. And that's just not true. Andy Dalton will not be going into the Hall of Fame. Maybe he is a Hall of Fame person, a Hall of Fame mentor, a really good guy by all accounts. Andy Dalton seems like a genuine human being. Love Andy Dalton. Big fan. He's done some incredible work off the field in his charity efforts. So maybe that's what Miles Sanders meant in Andy Dalton being a Hall of Famer. Because otherwise, that's just ridiculous.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.